Hello and welcome to Ethereum Classic Community Calls. ETC Community Calls is a weekly voice chat that happens on the Ethereum Classic Discord server every Tuesday, usually at 1500 hours UTC. The content of these calls is decided by the ETC community. If you'd like to contribute, you can join us on Discord at ethereumclassic.org/discord, and you'll find us in the Community Calls channel. If you'd like to help spread the good word of Classic, make sure you comment on this video, like it, subscribe, share, and hit the notification bell. Thanks to all involved in contributing to ETC. Welcome to Ethereum Classic Community Call number 15 for the 1st of March 2022. Today we have a pretty open agenda, and we have a bit of a show and tell from various different community members, and we would just like to invite people to have an open discussion. So thanks for joining us once again. There's just a couple of brief announcements. First of all, Donald McIntyre had a really good presentation yesterday, which I didn't attend in person, but listened to on YouTube. And it's a 0 to Bitcoin overview of how the history of blockchain got us to where we are today, including like a lot of stuff that I wasn't aware of, like the kind of prehistory stuff in terms of Bitcoin and what led up to the creation of it. So if you are new to the space or even a veteran and would like to know about the history of Bitcoin and the precursor to it, I highly recommend that presentation. It was really good, so thanks Donald for doing that. And you can find a link to that presentation in the show notes, as well as ethereumclassic.org. It's currently on the front page, so you can check it out there. Thank you for that, Donald.
You're welcome. And the second part of the course that is all about categorization and use cases and all the current events is on Wednesday at 16 hours UTC.
So that's tomorrow, right?
Yes, tomorrow, March 2nd, Wednesday.
Perfect. That should be one not to be missed. And I'm assuming that'll also be recorded and uploaded to the YouTube and put on the Ethereum Classic website if anyone can't make it.
Yes.
Perfect. So yeah, next we have the SHA-3 opinion poll on ETC Discord, which I believe is an initiative that Brother is setting up that could be used for a number of things, not just SHA-3, but as a general sort of straw polling system. Did you want to explain what that is, Brother?
Okay, so it's basically a closed channel where people will be able to vote. The channel will use a bot, a webhook, where I will send the information, and basically what I want to do. So the way I see it is trying to inform people about this change of algorithm in a way that is not so complicated. If you go on GitHub and see the ECIP, most people will just fail to read it, or I don't know, it's too complicated for them. So what I'll try to do is have objective information about what it means. I want to do the pros and the cons for this proposal, and I also want to make some complex questions, because it's easy to say, okay, let's change the algorithm because 51s may happen, but this is not really a question. The change for the algorithm means also assuring stability for the chain for a long period of time. It has many benefits, but also we should also take in consideration the actual state of ETC and the current hashing algorithm on ETC hash. So we need to inform people better so that they may express a better decision, because there is no way in a decentralized network to aggregate communities and make them share an opinion without speaking on their own language. So this is not something that I will do. This is something where I'll ask for opinions, I'll ask for data, I'll try to sort them out. The pool will have links for further information, and also I'm waiting on the updated proposal for the Checkak mining. So it will also include links there for anyone who want to go deeper. So basically, we need by the time Ether moves to the proof of stake, we need to have a view, a community view, and if this pool can offer that, I think it's a good asset for making a more informed how should I say this decision.
Awesome. What does that look like for users in the Discord? Do they just go into the polling tracker channel and they see a bunch of questions?
So my idea is to have a structure. So it's not an ordinary pool like you have for voting, right? What is your age? What do you like? Blah blah blah. So the poll should be showing so the structure should be something like the information about Checkak mining and the information about ETC hash, and compare the two of them, and also have the hardware part talked about, and see what are the benefits and what are the downsides, and I don't know, just aggregate information there with links and maybe links to videos about previous discussions. So what I'm trying to do is make a uniform, a form of unified information, so that people can answer maybe 3 or 4 questions about what is the path forward.
Interesting. Does that mean it's kind of a bit like a wiki page in terms of having a fairly balanced summary of both sides, and then asking people like which side of the fence do they fit in terms of each sort of small subtopic?
Yes, something like that, like a wiki page for this problem, basically, for this debate, because from my understanding, it is going on for a long time, and people are very passionate about it. So I think we should explain it better and see what common grounds we have, and express an opinion.
Yeah, that sounds good. I think it could even be something that is managed on GitHub as a means to maintain this document and also decide like corrections and stuff, because it has a pretty good tool set for handling that kind of stuff for code that could also be used for just plain documentation. So I think it's just a really good idea to have a single source of all these different arguments and counter arguments, and so that any person can, because it must be difficult having not been part of the conversation to suddenly join it, and then you hear one side without hearing the other, and it's a constant sort of back and forth, right? But if everything was in the same place, then people could get a fairly good idea of the pros and the cons without having to read through a bunch of posts and or listen to a bunch of podcasts.
Yes, it's very hard to follow for an average user. I also saw on the new website that there is a mention there about the debate on SHA-3, which has like 4 lines. So if we manage to extend it and have a proper documentation and objective overview of this debate, I think people will start realizing what is better and how can they see this information taking into effect, and maybe act on it and express on it, and because overall the community in its own way is pushing the forward chain, the the chain forward. So extending this to the website, maybe, right, could be beneficial.
Yeah, for sure. And I think having something outside of the ECIP process would be beneficial as well. Partly because that process, I guess, like editing the proposal in line isn't really part of the process. So it's difficult to see the counter arguments to a given proposal just by looking at the proposal, because you then have to go into the all the different issues that are created on that and read through the whole discussion. And there's no single point where you can say, okay, bang, 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 these are the pros, these are the cons. So maybe it would be, I don't know what the best way to like actually implement this would be, but something like a wiki or just a new repository that's dedicated to just a bunch of markdown files that have different debates in them, right? I mean, did you have anything in mind specifically for that?
Well, the reason I was thinking about this is because some people come and go and come again and say, hey, we want SHA-3 because this and this and this. But this debate has been for a long time, and people need to catch up with the current status. If they don't know the current status of this proposal, and they can't, they don't have the time to inform themselves. It's just blah blah talk, and nothing happens, and people get angry, and we all heard the last development call, which was a bit messy. So I'm trying to avoid this and have a more clear argument when the time comes, if the time comes.
A format that works that I've seen work fairly well for for presenting this kind of proposals would be to have 3 sections. One section just gives a description of what exactly is being proposed, but without justification, also just basically the technical thing. And so this is completely neutral. Then there would be a section where one side presents their view, motivation for being for or against it, and so on. And then there's a section that's where the other side presents their view. And none of these should be extremely long. In printed media, we would say maybe one small page maximum. And each side should obviously have one editor who combines those ideas, so that you don't get 10 different essays merged into one incoherent article. And then you get something that somebody can read within a relatively short time and get a picture of what's going on and what the positions are.
Yes, that's a good idea. That is something that I'm thinking also about the structure that it should have.
And I guess it would be good to have like a character limit on each section to sort of force each side to condense the argument.
Yes, and I was looking through some materials, and basically, we only have an article on Medium written by Stevan, which is good, right? And it's okay, but it doesn't it doesn't it it isn't updated with the real things that had happened in the past year, and I think we should have something better than that, and make it more objective, and see and basically see what happens, see what people think.
Yeah, I think this is a really good approach, and one that is pretty simple to set up. Do you have an idea for a name for this thing?
A name? I don't have a name. Maybe Czechak mining debate, or opinion poll for Czechak mining.
Czechak. Don't use Czechak. Use SHA-3. SHA-3 is the brand and it's easier.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yes.
I was thinking as a name for this new process, which I think is outside ECIP, because that's far more formal, and it's kind of like a pre-ECIP community debating arena. I was thinking something along the lines of articles of consensus or something. Consensus forming.
Yes, that may work too, but I'm not sure if average or medium people in crypto really understand how the consensus work in ETC, or what it means. So my idea is to make it as simple as possible, and as informant as possible.
Important bit would be to also have something at the end that tells people what they should do once they vote this. So if they need to vote in any way, if they need to write to their representative to express their opinion, do they have to do nothing and just wait till something is announced? So that should also be clear. Otherwise, you create a lot of confusion and people come and try whatever comes to their mind.
We can also add some sort of classification, like okay, investors vote this, miners vote this, supporters vote this, but it gets too complicated. So we have to have some sort of unity about two directions.
The big problem
Ethereum
with
tried
voting
something like this
is
with ProgPal. I can't remember the tool they used, but it basically listed out the arguments and or discussions, and attributed certain people to it, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I think the one issue with voting in the classical sense is that it's very hard to control the number, to make sure that the numbers are in any way representative. I mean, it's very easy to game those things. What you can do though is collect opinions and group them, group similar opinions into the same one, and then you could have a list of opinions. So this would be a purely qualitative poll, not a quantitative one. And of course, in the end, we also need a quantitative one, but I'm not sure we have a mechanism for doing this yet.
Let's just try and find the Ethereum one. That's a good example. I think Hudson might have done that. I can't remember where that was.
Well, the thing is, we already have a channel where people can express opinion about SHA-3. We already have that, and people can just go there and speak their mind about the proposal. What I'm trying here is to move from that opinion to an actual answer for a question, or two questions, or four questions. So I think it validates the understanding better and expressing the opinion.
Sure, sure. What I mean is that again, there should be an editorial process. So you don't go to a channel and write your statements or fight with others, but you write your opinion to the editors of the pro or contra sections, and then they can incorporate this, or maybe you make new sections where you just just include all the small statements that you receive if you don't want to work it into the presentation that each side makes. And so that you don't basically you avoid the dialogue, the direct dialogue, but you have people comment on this proposal as that is presented already with the technical part, the neutral part, and then the two sides. And then you
Right.
can basically have the reactions.
I see this, like, the benefit of this thing is that it kind of deduplicates all of the noise that is in chat channels and condenses it into just pure, like, very brief lines. So yeah, it's good that people have opinions, and we want to incorporate all those opinions into an argument, but it's just about navigating what the different points of view are in the space.
Also, there is another thing. We had debates for a long time. So, what happens with the opinions that were expressed like 2 years ago, right? So, nobody will stay and start scrolling the chat and do all that stuff. So, we need a better tool to make those people and just express it once, right? So you have that expression for years to come. If SHA-3 comes after 2 years or 3 years or 1 year, I don't know, right? That opinion, that vote, that remains in the channel. So it's simpler to get an overview.
In that case, I think it would make sense to, whilst yes, have a summary of the arguments, also potentially link those points to any other, like, supporting evidence, or copy in like a full explanation of the argument with supporting evidence into the document, as opposed to just having a single line, so that there's a full sort of robust explanation of that.
Yes, I agree. The document should be like a white paper, right? So it has to contain both sides. It has to contain some technical. It has to contain some metrics. It has to contain some current facts about the mining industry. So we need to put them together and make them easy to read and understand, and maybe adjust it if new informations appear, and also if COP makes any move in any of the directions.
Yeah, I think this is a great idea. The only question then is what tools to use, and I guess we should look into a bunch of different options and appraise what will work best for this. I'm thinking of kind of like a combination of a sort of forum, but also having a wiki built into it in some way. And if GitHub can do all that, then GitHub's great, but it might not be the most accessible, and there might be issues with like merging those documents. So if there's other options out there that make a better tool, then yeah, suggestions are open and welcome.
From what I know, Discord offers these tools and offers a lot of I don't know, let's say quotes or spaces or alignments or stuff like that. So I'll try to make a draft just for a test, and maybe get an opinion on that. My idea was to use it to write it ourselves, to write this pool of ourselves. We can also use a third-party boot and invite it to the server and just put the questions in, put some description, and let people vote. But I think having control of it and um, the possibility to add text and make it clear, or links, or stuff like that would be more beneficial. Just write it ourselves and make it the best we can.
When you say write it ourselves, you mean program our own consensus building software?
When I say write it ourselves, it means like having the text, the full text, the full paper that contains all the explanations, and having people vote A, B, C, D, or something like that, and that should be the only process that the users are taking.
I think something like a wiki could be useful for collaborative editing. Otherwise, I think a centralized solution would be great. Where you just have for each of those sections, you have an editor. So the editor also does the access control, so that you don't get one side, for example, trying to put bad things into the presentation of the other side. And I'm not sure you would get a ton of editing activity anyway, so it may not be necessary to develop great tools if in the end it will be maybe 10 people who contribute significant amounts of text, and maybe you get a few dozen or shorter opinions that get expressed and that you incorporate one way or another into the whole thing. And there you already have it, basically.
I basically disagree with adding opinions, right? So because we already have the Checkak mining channel, I disagree about adding opinions or personal feelings, or I think we should just go about the facts. You have the facts. You need to have them objectively. You need to have them verified as much as possible. And the final text, I think it should be reviewed by all parties involved, or people who are close to this subject, and then just have it in the channel.
Yeah, the opinion parts would be mainly to make the work of the editor a bit easier, because I would expect that you would first that the editor would first discuss things with people who are the basically main representatives of the opinion of the respective side, and come up with some texts that would then be the overview that the site presents, and then other people would chime in and would add some more things, and some of these might be difficult to integrate. I mean, not difficult that they would present any fundamental problems, but it's just a lot of work that every time somebody says, "Oh yeah, that's a good idea," but then you have to rephrase some paragraphs and so on, and so it may be easier if you can just put them verbatim or condense them a little bit. If you see, okay, the two people are basically saying the same thing but with different words, then you condense this into a single statement, so that you would have the nicely edited text plus individual points slightly separately that have not been integrated, but that a reader might also want to consider. So, but this would strictly be to make the work of the editor easier.
So Henry just posted a link to a thing called Kilo, which is what Ethereum mainnet foundation was using to decide about programmatic proof of work. And if you jump into the community calls channel, you can see that link. And it appears that this is the perfect solution for this kind of debate because it stacks up exactly the way that you're talking, and I believe there's some kind of voting mechanism in there as well. Does that look like what you were thinking of, Brolau?
I'm just watching it now. Yeah, I think this is something more advanced than what I had in mind. I don't know how much we want to complicate this process, and if it's easy to use for average users who are not so familiar with mining and algorithm and what how much they can understand and I don't know make an opinion about it. I was thinking of something more simpler but more informant, a simpler system of getting opinions, but then also inform the community about the changes.
I mean, what I can see in this link is pretty well. I mean, for a technical conversation, it kind of breaks things down into bite-sized chunks at least. And whilst it's kind of impossible to oversimplify fully, it does a pretty good job of laying things out and stacking things up against each other. And as a platform that already exists, it seems like some low-hanging fruit. So this might be something worth experimenting with.
Well, it's a good idea to also look over it and maybe see if from there we find some things that we like and maybe bring it here or decide if we should use it. But I'm not sure if people are ready to just go on a platform that they don't know, make an account, and just express opinions there and I don't know, sum them up from there. I was looking for a more simpler approach.
I think there are several things that we're talking here. One is whether there should be good information and updated information for everybody to know exactly what is the situation and what is SHA-3, what is the ETC hash, etc. The other thing is the process of debating, no? Of arguing, of presenting an opinion, and then somebody presents an opposing opinion, and managing all that too. Then you guys talked about a poll. A poll is just to gauge or measure what is the opinion of the people, not to know if 90% support it or only 10% or stuff like that. And then there's voting. Voting is a system by which you gather units and you measure how much was on one side, how much was on the other, and if it passes a threshold, then a decision is made. So I don't think that we're talking about voting here. This is just to measure opinion and consensus, rough consensus, etc. Decisions are made by people by running a node or mining on whichever chain they want, or buying the token or developing on it. That's how people make decisions. So I would be very careful to keep this kind of tools to just information and measuring opinion, and that's it. I think that to attach a Ethereum Classic wiki to ethereumclassic.org would be amazing, like ethereumclassic.org/wiki, and there you have all the neutral explanatory encyclopedia type articles, and one of them could be the SHA-3 debate, and you have a wiki page there with all the information.
Yes, I agree with you, Donald. I don't want to make a voting system for this proposal. I don't want to take it in a direction of technical approach. I don't want to make it about opinions, and I just want a place where people can get access to valid information without all the noise, and have a simple opinion, not a vote.
I think that's great. And I think that the format of a wiki would be good. If we have volunteers to add information and edit it, I would love to have a wiki on ethereumclassic.org.
Yeah,
I posted a link to the Bitcoin wiki there on the community call. That I use that all the time. There's a lot of people there adding information and explaining things. So that could be used as a model if somebody wants to do it.
is there a reason we couldn't just have under the knowledge base individual articles about these topics that's maintained by a bunch of people, and we come up with some basic format and, as mentioned, like a limit on the number of characters, like a subsection called debates and SHA-3 blah blah blah?
I think a sub-channel for Checkak may work, where we can collect previous good or reliable or trustful information and try to stack them together, and so that when you go through them, you'd have a more better understanding.
Well, I think given that the end result should be just a reasonably sized document that describes the proposal and the two sides, it's not so important really what kind of mechanism you use to present this. So this could be a wiki, it could be some site like this Kialo, or it could be also just a section on the Ethereum Classic side. I'm not sure what kind of content management system you have there. I mean, you could have an editor send you paper that you scan and put on the site, right? So it doesn't really matter how you implement this. And the discussion, that is the making of these elements, of these three elements, this is a separate process, and I think for this it would be perfectly fine to have one or maybe better multiple Discord channels, and then people who want to contribute to one of those parts could discuss there with among each other and with the editor, and the editor would pick up those things and integrate this into the document. Or you could also do it on GitHub or whatever. Doesn't really matter again. But just that you have a way where you can do it efficiently. But then the end result can be slow, so you don't need seamless integration with the editing process.
Yeah, I agree. It just needs to make sure some person, an editor, has to champion either side, and ideally can come to some agreement on the neutral part of it as well.
Yes, but in the same time we have the essay process, right? So not sure where adding more channels or more places to debate, it's just redundant at some point, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's necessarily about having a continued debate. It's more about like faithfully summarizing the sides of the debate and crystallizing it into a document. So I'm trying to figure out where this voting element or poll element comes in, Brolel. Like, what are people questioning here or responding to?
So, in my opinion, it should be about informing, right, about the aspects of a moving to a SHA-3 algorithm. It should be stated very clear what are the pros and the cons. It should be it should have some links about technical aspects, and also it should be updated to the current state of the work that has been done in this regard, and let people decide what is their opinion, because we don't have any tool to measure. We don't have anything that can say, okay, we have a community and what it wants to do, right? I can go on Twitter and make a poll and see what people think, because most of my followers are within Ethereum Classic. But in the same time, for a proposal that has technical aspects, we don't present it as we should. So it's a combination between informing, marketing, and getting a feedback.
Okay, and I guess the first step is just getting a piece together that people can look at. I would just comment that, and I'm just going to quote for the audio something that I kind of agree with. So the quote is, "We reject kings, presidents, and voting. We believe in rough consensus and running code." And that's David Clark, who's an internet pioneer. So whilst it's good to get an idea of what the community's thinking, it's kind of difficult to, because of lack of Sybil resistance in most consensus building tools, to use it in any sort of actual decision-making process that has authority. And really, even if the vast majority, or even maybe not vast, but if the majority of people are voting for something and that thing is bad, we shouldn't necessarily just follow what the majority are thinking, I should say. So really the ideas should be judged based on their own merit as opposed to whether or not they're popular.
Well, I agree with you. The voting system is very messed up, so I don't think it can be used really in decentralized application. We all saw the shit show about the treasury and the voting system there, so I don't think we should go in that place again anytime soon. On the other hand, look at Switzerland, where for a lot of years the people vote their laws directly. So, in other words, they express an opinion about how the community should be run.
The difference with Sweden, though, is one person gets one vote, right? There's Sybil resistance. There's like, online, if everyone's anonymous, one person gets 1 million votes, and there's no way around that, unfortunately.
Yes, that's a problem for the current state on Discord. I don't think this should really be a problem, because it's basically an opinion poll, and I really think that if the questions are right and put in a way that makes sense. So let's say we have a question: do you think that that Ethereum Classic should move to SHA-3 just because to mitigate 51 attacks? Right. This can be one question to see if people are still afraid and prefer to move to an unknown place, like moving to SHA-3, because they are scared, right? So you have different ways to measure opinions and see what are the facts behind that decision.
But what are you actually measuring, right? How do you know that it's actual real people as opposed to just one guy?
That's one problem, and the other problem is that you don't know how many.
Not only that, but even if you're measuring that 99% are in favor of something and it's true, it doesn't matter anyway. That's rough consensus. Rough consensus
Right.
is not about voting.
Donald, could you go a bit more into detail about what rough consensus is?
Rough consensus is difficult to explain because it's an abstraction, which is basically means the absence of. It means the absence of kings, presidents, and all that you mentioned. It's a cypherpunk concept, which basically says that if you want something, you just build it, you code it yourself, and that's how things are going to be made. And then if other people want to use it or participate in it, they just participate. It's their own personal individual choice. So in a country like Sweden, the analogy is so wrong because a blockchain is the opposite of a nation or a country. Blockchain is something that you participate in voluntarily because you like it. So it's the absence of central decision making and the absence of a voting system where just because more people say that they like something, it's forced on you because you cannot escape the place where you are, the nation. Blockchain is something that is permissionless. You can go in and you can go out whenever you want. And if you like a change, you just adopt it. That's the maximum extent of decision making. It's your own individual adoption. In the case of Ethereum Classic, if you want to buy the token ETC because you like that network because of its design, then you're participating there, and that is your way of participating, not because you voted or somebody forced you. Or you can build a dApp, that's another way of participating, or you can code a client or participate in the ECIP process, or you can participate in the community, in Discord, Twitter, etc., giving your opinions. Or you can run a node or be a miner. So that's the way decisions are made, because something is proposed, people like it when it's not controversial, and it goes very fast, like when we do hard forks, which are very easy to do because we all agree that those upgrades have to be done. Or something may be proposed and everybody rejects it, or half of the community rejects it, which is, for example, let's say if somebody proposes to change the monetary policy. In that case, if the people who propose it want to force it in and they have the right, they can fork and split the chain and they go with their own algorithm. And that's another thing that everybody has the right to do, fork away. So there's no centralized decision making. It's all pushed to the individual level. So and this conversation started, oh yeah, there should be better information about Ethereum Classic. And now we're talking about voting. You see how our individual mental biases drives us to centralization. You have to be very careful of these things. It's not trivial that we're talking here. We've wasted 50 minutes talking about, we started talking about, hey, let's give information and better information, updated information to people. And now we're debating voting. I mean, please be careful of these things, guys.
Yes, I agree with you, Donald.
Understand the principles. Please understand the principles. Don't be naive. Don't say, oh yeah, in Sweden they do it like this. Please don't be so naive, guys.
Well, there are several things that we can measure for determining the weight of a vote. One thing would be, for example, we could take votes from client operators, and then they could gather the opinion of their user base and shape their vote accordingly. This would be a very precise thing in the sense that if a client operator is strongly opposed and would not adopt any such change, then this would directly reflect in a potential chain split or so. So in that sense, it would be a very relevant vote. On the other hand, of course, it has a very coarse granularity, this kind of system. And
one thing is to measure opinion, just to measure consensus, and another thing is to vote. Vote has to be banned from ETC.
The only vote is the hash rate.
Yeah, you have hash rate, and you can measure hash rate. That's a good one. Yes.
No, hash rate is not a vote. Hash rate is not a vote. Running a node is not a vote. Buying the token is not a vote. No, you're confusing the abstraction of a vote, which is a unit that you accumulate, and you see how many are on one side, how many are on the other, and if it passes a certain threshold, then everybody's forced to adopt something. So running a node or mining one chain or the other is not a vote. It's just adoption. It's just I like it, I use it. and that's it. It's not a vote. A vote is a totally different concept. Voting is a system of making a decision collectively and forcing all those who don't agree to adopt it. And that's not rough consensus. Rough consensus and blockchains are absolutely voluntary and individual in the sense of decision making.
Well, in the same way that you can vote with your dollar, you can vote with your CPU cycles.
You don't vote for your dollar. With your dollar, you buy
It's
things.
a phrase.
Separate the concept of Satoshi Nakamoto was wrong when he said one CPU, one vote. Connecting the concept of voting with your personal actions is the most wrong thing that Satoshi has ever done. So eliminate the concept of voting in ETC, because that's a recipe to go to centralization again.
So returning back to just a second. Returning back to the discussion of the pool, I think we can make that people or members in Discord, we can make only supporters to express a vote, because if they are supporters, the system, right, the pool system won't be so much abused.
It doesn't matter if it's abused. A poll is just a poll. It's just to check how many of my friends have certain opinions. That's it. It's not that important. Just do a poll.
Yep.
Everybody goes to vote, and you choose to believe whether the poll. It doesn't mean anything anyway in terms of decision making.
Right. It's actually
that's where you're connecting polling with voting. What you want to do is to measure the opinion, so you can turn around and say, you see, we have to do this because the poll says so, which is what they did with the DAO and the carbon vote. Why don't you use carbon vote for that?
No, I think here you are wrong. I'm making the poll so that people get more information about the debate.
Well, that's fine. That's perfect. A poll is just for that. But we've been, again, 58 minutes talking about this. It's not that important. It's not a vote. We're not making a decision for SHA-3. It's just informational. You just put a wiki, you put all the information there, you update it, and then you put a polling thing where people go and use Twitter and other polling things and just measure, or the one that a person did here, that they gathered all the opinions of the community. That was very good on an Excel spreadsheet. Those kinds of tools, that's the most you can do.
I would argue
But
that even those.
What I'm criticizing is that you guys are you go wobbling between voting and polling, and you're not realizing that you are walking that fine line. This is only informational. A poll is great, and I agree. Let's do a poll to see how many people support SHA-3. It's only more information, and that's it. It's not consequential in terms of making a decision. Like Istora said, if 90% of the people are in favor of something that is wrong, it doesn't have to pass anyway. It has to be kicked out, like the Treasury. Okay, guys, unfortunately I have a meeting again, so thank you very much, Istora and Brother, for organizing this call.
Thanks, Donald. Always appreciate your input. I would also add to that it could be argued that even having a poll is a bad idea, purely because it influences people through like a non-rational or like non-evidential basis. As in, if someone sees that 90% of the community support this thing, then it's likely they're just going to follow the crowd because they want to, it's human instinct to follow the crowd. So it's biasing people in a way that is making them not make a decision on their own, potentially.
Yes, there is a problem there, but you also have to admit that proposals need to gather community consensus. So how do you do that?
I guess the closest thing would be, as you mentioned, one about node operators and essentially just the consequential people. It doesn't really matter what everyone thinks. It matters what the people who actually run the code think. And that includes miners and node operators and exchanges and people that write the clients. Like in that balance of power, who's actually having consequential decisions. It's their choices that really matter here. And of course, if community members have a strong opinion, they can influence the thoughts of those players, and that's the more important thing, as opposed to just like seeing what everyone would prefer to have.
Well, the problem is with succeeding in measuring. So this is my idea about the poll, is to make just to inform people and get an opinion, and from there, if we get the results, we get some sort of results, we can more than advance in a way that we can make node operators miners, or I don't know, we can make them more engaged.
I'm trying to figure out how do you bridge the creation of this simple document, right, that outlines the debate? How do you bridge that into a poll?
Well, I'm not sure yet, but this is why we're having discussions, just to find a suitable way to measure and inform people about this debate, so that we eliminate the noise around it, and have something that we know. I think in a few months we should know that these proposals will be pushed forward, updated, continued, if work will continue to be done. It's something to, just a way to keep this going and see where it leads us.
I guess you could do a sort of informal poll among client operators. I mean, they probably have some idea of whatever their user base is, what they would prefer, and they could provide feedback, and then you could see where things are leaning. I mean, if everybody tells you, oh no, if we go SHA, then we just swap ETC, then you know it's probably not a good idea. If everybody tells you, oh yes, I've been waiting for this all my life, then it's definitely going the other way. And maybe they have some more mixed response, and maybe they will also talk to people who haven't been aware yet. Maybe, for example, a pool could try to reach their miners, and then get a more substantial information on that base. I mean, a pool operator often has an idea of what is behind a certain account, and so that they can also provide some quantitative measures for the weight of an opinion, not just how many machines are there, or how many times people click on some button, and that might help to shape an idea of where the community is leaning. It's very hard to get anything precise, because then you move to things like hash rate, or what was your account balance at this date, and so on, and then you move very far away from this democratic ideal of one person, one vote, and you will get lots of flack for trying this. So basically, yes, as Donald said, the voting mechanism that we used to doesn't apply there. What you can do is make opinion polls and try to make them as accurate as possible, and possibly also evolve them over time. Start with something simple that we can get some data, and then you might find out where you need to dig a little deeper, or where this is already sufficient feedback. And then after a few iterations, you might have something that's actually quite good for telling you what the community thinks.
Could you elaborate on what you mean by client operators and the different kinds of operators that might be involved?
Just everybody who runs an ETC client, CoreGraph or Beso. That's not a very large number of entities, and I mean every pool should have one. So you get all the pools. Exchanges will almost certainly have one or several, and so you get input from exchanges. Exchanges also to a certain extent represent investors who just invest in the coin itself and don't do much else with it. What you don't catch by talking with client operators is the people who just have some ETC sitting on their private wallet and are planning to hold them for the next few decades, and who might not even be paying attention to daily news on ETC. It's just something that they have, and well, they'll worry about it when they retire. And so there's always some blind spots. What is definitely important is, I mean, if we ignore the whole opinion forming and process, but just the outcome at the end. I mean, let's assume the two positions cannot be reconciled, and it comes to conflicting change. So the conflicting split of the chain. So you get one chain with SHA-3 and one with ETC hash, and then you could see how much hash rate you would actually get on each side. And this is something you could possibly try to find out by such polls, when you mainly ask the miners where they would go. So you ask the pool operators to ask their miners what they would do, or if a pool operator decides, oh, well, we just support one and not the other, then you would also have an indication. But of course, it could also mean that the miners will just switch to other pools.
And also, this, like with SHA-3, it's a completely different algorithm, so that's a very difficult thing to measure in terms of hash rate.
Yes. I mean, you can predict it to some extent for the initial phase. I mean, the assumption is that if a SHA-3 chain is created, then it would initially be supported mainly by GPUs and a little bit by FPGAs, and ASICs will only come later. Now, FPGAs would be mostly new players in this area, and SHA-3 ASICs would be completely new players on ETC. So we can't really predict what they will do. But we can see what GPU miners who are already mining ETC will do. There's of course the small issue that the miner population will change dramatically after the merge. So whatever we sample at the moment will not be very representative. But it could give us already an indication of where things will go. And then once the merge has happened and the major movements will have stopped and people will have settled down a little bit, then we could maybe get some more accurate data. Or if an early attempt at obtaining such data shows that we can't get anything useful, then we may have to think about a different approach. But yes, it's basically like any opinion poll. You ask a few people, and from this you try to construct the opinion of the general public. And it's very much the same. Again, here you have some data, but it will be distorted because you can't ask everyone, and well, you have to work with this.
Yeah, and the question is, what is the opinion poll actually useful for? What does it actually achieve in terms of reaching a decision, if any?
Essentially, the conflict can be, I mean, the conflict between those two competing sides can be resolved if one side withdraws. So if you can convince one side that they don't have a chance, if they execute the conflict as planned, then you have resolved the issue. If both insist on doing their thing, then you have a conflict that you can't resolve, and then you will just have to basically have the market fight it out.
One very important question, I think, is are you willing to run a version of the chain even if someone is going to do a fork of it? Like, are you willing to either stick on ETC hash, or on the flip side, are you willing to cause to mine a SHA-3 chain even if ETH hash is still running? Like, because if there was a significant number
That's
of
one.
people, if there's
That's one thing. And if you're a pool, then you should also add how much hash rate you expect. But first of all, how much hash rate you already have. This limits the number of pools that you want to look at to not too many. And then also how much hash rate you would expect to go each side. And then well, maybe the pool operators have already talked with Miners about this, and they have a rough idea of what the outcome will be. Or maybe they can ask on that occasion their Miners, or either by contacting them individually if they have established a contact, or just by posting something on their website and get opinions this way. I mean, most pools would expect to have a group of large miners that they know fairly well, and they probably also know what their preferences are. So you might get an overview of a significant number of the current ETC hash power by going this path.
Just want to add about the community pool. I think the main question is the community want a chain split? Because this solves a lot of other questions. If the community doesn't want a hard fork or doesn't want a chain split, I think this is the main starting point.
Yep, and that also, well, there's multiple ways to do a chain split. There's a messy way and a non-messy way, and the non-messy way is unfortunately probably not one way that the SHA-3 side would like. As like what I'm referring to here is changing the chain ID such that yes, there's a chain split, but replay attacks don't happen. But I don't think either side wants to bump the ID because that means losing the entire ecosystem. So it has to be made clear what the implication of a chain split is, and I don't really think many people understand how that's going to play out.
Right, that's the comment I was going to inject, because there's the emotional argument, and then there's the practical side of walking down what the implications of chain split are and what happens after a split, who's going to maintain it, what happens to the ecosystem, so on and so forth, and even the dreaded question of funding.
Yes, and on that note, that's also why it's important to talk to client operators that are exchanges, because exchanges may decide to delist ETC if it gets too chaotic, or they might decide to support only one side and ignore the other, and this might in turn also shift the opinion of miners. If one branch just becomes too difficult to use, and possibly also if one branch gets boycotted by exchanges, then we could also see a very rapid negative value development, which again would then cause miners to shift because if that side just is not profitable. And in terms of having a nice split, I mean there are several scenarios. One could be just change the chain ID and fork ETC at a given point with the ledger still intact and the history before that split. But you could also essentially that's what I keep on proposing. Start a new chain under the ETC umbrella with SHA-3 and ramp it up from zero. So you avoid all those issues where you have a huge amount of value in your ecosystem, but you don't have the hash rate yet to protect it. But you could grow those things together, and you could maintain the same technological basis, because much work has already been done, sponsored by ETC Co, on the client side to support SHA-3. So that could easily be developed into a stage where, well, not trivially, but it should be reasonable to do this to a state where you would have where there would be clients that are capable of working on both chains. So the SHA-3 side would not have to start from zero. They would have this very important element, the client, already available to them. And I suppose there could also be an agreement could be reached to that this would continue to be supported, so that they wouldn't have to worry about taking over this key role at the beginning. Plus, if this comes with the official blessing of the ETC community, basically it would be sort of a, let's say, it would be a new coin that is being developed inside the under the ETC umbrella. So if this comes with the blessing of ETC, this could also give it some credibility and ease and open some doors, for example, to get listed on exchanges and such. So it could be a much easier process than having to start a completely new coin somewhere. But it would also provide an opportunity to decouple things from the existing ETC chain, and you could still switch between chains just by exchanging coins. And so if at some point in the future it becomes clear that ETC is no longer viable for some reason, and people really want to switch to SHA-3, then but this chain has then evolved to a point where it's mature, and then assets could be transferred by the usual mechanisms to this. So you would at least not have a loss of functionality if you do this. And so this is, I think, also something worth considering, because this would avoid the kind of messy split. Plus, they could the new coin could decide freely on how it wants to start, whether it wants to copy the ledger or part of the ledger, or if it wants to implement some airdrops or so to bring people from ETC on board the ETC SHA-3 chain and so on. But all these are decisions that can be taken by the people promoting this. So they don't need to coordinate with anyone else. They can get feedback, obviously, of what the rest of the community thinks makes sense or not. But they would not. In the end, the choice would be theirs. So this would avoid a lot of conflict. Again, decentralization. Why have one chain if you can have two?
So you're proposing a hard spoon, basically, potentially. A hard spoon being a new chain that copies the state at a given block.
I would leave that open. I would say a new chain, but how they initialize it, that would be their decision. I'm not sure if it would be a good idea to copy the whole ledger over, for example.
Right. You might just want to do the non-contract accounts.
Or the opposite.
Well,
keep the contract.
I would say
the money.
Ignore the contracts and duplicate the money, because then you get a clean slate and there's no bloat. It's just like a Genesis block, right? Because otherwise you have to keep all the gas tokens.
Okay, but whatever. I mean, that's again that's ultimate decision of the ETC SHA-3 group. What they want. Whatever.
It's an extremely
best
interesting concept. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's just what I wanted to say. It's their decision. They don't need anyone's permission for this. They're free to choose whatever makes sense for them.
I do also wonder if there is a middle way here, and this seems like the closest thing to it, but there's a lot of details to iron out, and finding a solution that is agreeable to everyone. I mean, if for the SHA-3 side it's either do this or there's no SHA-3 whatsoever, then I mean it seems like the better option, but that kind of depends on whether or not. So if the choice is do SHA-3 and therefore cause a chain split, is that preferable to trying to find this alternative approach that is officially supported and has the same philosophy as ETC, but instead is done in a way that guarantees that no chain split occurs? So open question there. I guess we'll see in the coming days whether this question is answered purely by whatever happens after the merge, or there's some other proposal. But yeah, these ideas need to be summarized And Brothers initiative, I think, is a good action point for us to try and solve this week, so that next week we can actually, start working on this. Okay, well, it seems like we've pretty much covered this point, which has spawned a conversation that's been way longer and way more interesting than I anticipated. So I thoroughly enjoyed it, and thanks for contributions. We are now an hour and a half in. As always, we're going to open up the floor. If anyone wants to jump in and say hello, or show and tell, or just bring up any topic they're interested in, feel free.
I have a question regarding the poll. I was thinking about using it to find out where community members were. We had a conversation last week about where to hold a potential summit or conference. I just kind of wanted to get an idea of where everyone was and what was going to be convenient.
Cool, thanks for that. And yeah, we should definitely do that. I'm not sure, Brolau, what stage you're at with this bot, but if it has the ability to do simple polls where you can not just vote on stuff, but provide responses, we can just put out a sub-thread, can't we, and say, where do you live, or which continent are you on, for example, and then just collect information about that.
I think there are bots like that. There are also simple pull bots and more complex ones. Now depends what we want to do. Basically, the opportunities can be adjusted and brought to Discord.
Cool. I'm sure we can. We'll make an action point out of that and add it to the show, the meeting minutes, and then I'll try and put something together there before next week.
Great, thanks.
Another thing, I'll try by the next call to have a structure for the SHA-3 debate and talk it with you guys and see if we move it forward or we just let it die if there isn't how should I say it, consideration for it. If we don't need it, we might as well not do it.
Sounds good. And let's link up after this call. I have some ideas about how we can organize that.
Okay.
I also just had an idea this week about trying to defog the Ethereum Classic community, in that it's kind of difficult to know exactly who's actually doing stuff and which teams are active and who's active in those teams and all the different nooks and crannies of the community, including this Discord. And maybe there's some other Discord channel that we don't know of that, I know there's a Telegram that I don't use but is out there, and there's a whole community on Twitter, and there's exchanges, there's miners, there's all kinds of different players out there, but there's no central sort of directory of where these different groups are. There's the channels thing on the website, but it's really just a list of links to different communities. And it'd be better, I think, to have almost like a social graph of all the different participants in the Ethereum Classic community. And if there's ever a need to sort of blast out and communicate with the whole community at some point, it'd be good to have lines of communication into all of the major sort of players in that graph. So I thought at some point it'd be good to try and get a list of those people, but I don't know where to start really with that. As you mentioned, Werner, I think there's different pool operators and miners and stuff. So apart from reaching out and doing it manually, I'm not sure where to start. Okay, well, if there's any last comments or anyone want to say hello, please do so now, or we'll wrap it up. Okay, then, thanks for joining us this week, and we will see you next week for a ETC CC number 16 next Tuesday, same time, same place. We might have a guest. It might be slightly different time, but we'll be sure to announce it. So check in the Discord and for the announcement there. So take care and see you next week. Bye-bye.